नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नमस्ये पुरुषं त्वाद्यं ईश्वरं प्रकृतेः परम् अलक्ष्यं सर्वभूतानां अन्तर्बहिरवस्थितम्। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमः पंकजनाभाय नमः पंकजमालिने नमः पंकजनेत्राय नमस्ते पंकजाङ्घ्रये। विशदः सन्तुताः शश्वत् तत्र तत्र जगद्गुरो भवतः दर्शनं यत् स्यात् अपुनर्भवदर्शनम्। Kunti Stuti. Even though we concluded Kunti Stuti last week, in order to do more justice to Kunti Devi, we need to dwell on some of the shlokas that were not adequately covered during the last session. Kunti's Stuti is filled with quintessential bhakti and profound wisdom. We learn from Kunti several things. We learn from her that bhakti is not mere emotionalism. Very important to understand this. First of all, bhakti is not easy to practice, and bhakti is not mere emotionalism. Jnana, when it blossoms and matures fully, becomes bhakti. We also learn from Kunti that pain in life is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. Kunti also teaches us that pain in life is a great purifier. A pain can be a purifier by giving us an opportunity to stay connected with Krishna and enduring the pain. One also in the process gets purified. Therefore, pain is a great purifier. We also learn from her that pain is a great protector. By constantly reminding us of the fragility of life, by constantly reminding us of the temporariness of this worldly life, pain also protects us from getting trapped in samsara forever. Therefore, we learn from Kunti that pain can be a great protector. We also learn from her that pain is also a pointer. By realizing the worldly nature, the true nature of our worldly experiences, and realizing that it is impossible to experience eternal happiness while one is trapped in the cycle of samsara, pain points us towards the source of all happiness. Pain points us to a world that exists beyond this temporary world. And therefore, pain is also a great pointer. Now we see that Kunti appeals to Krishna to stay back. That's how the whole prayers. And then we saw how when it ended, she ends asking for nothing other than Krishna's grace, Krishna's mercy. Kunti, in the process, glorifies Krishna and also brings out various facets of Krishna Avatara. Kunti says, Manye tvam kalam yishanam anadi nidhanam vibhum samam charantam sarvatra bhutanam yan mitah kalihi. Again, a gem of a shloka here. Kunti, in a very simple way, packs profound wisdom in the shloka. She looks at Krishna and she addresses him as Kala, as though she was witness to what happened on the battlefield of Kurukshetra when Krishna himself declared, Kalosmi lokakshayat krit pravrittaha. Kunti looks at Krishna and says, Manye tvam kalam yishanam. She says, hey Krishna, I consider you as kalam yishanam. You are the Supreme Lord. You are Kala, the time. It's a very, very profound reality, realization that Kunti is now expressing here. Looking at Krishna, she says, Krishna, your time. Now, time, it makes what is unpleasant unavoidable. Time makes what is unpleasant unavoidable. What is unwelcome unavoidable. What is unwelcome? Obviously, none of us want to age. None of us want to be non-existent. But this body is subject to change, is under the control of time, is heading only in one direction, towards disease and destruction, which is unwelcome, unpalatable, unpleasant, but unavoidable. But the beauty here is, when the same time is recognized as Krishna, when we recognize time as Krishna, time as manifestation of Krishna, the unavoidable also becomes welcome. In fact, when we recognize Krishna as time, there is nothing which is unavoidable. The body may be heading in one direction, because the body, after all, is mortal. But we also know that in that process, we are only stepping from the zone, from the realm of mortality to the realm of immortality. When we invest in time, most often we are told we should invest in time. Investment in time is nothing but investment in Krishna. There is nothing but constantly loving him all the time. When we start loving Krishna, that is investing in time and not loving other things in the world, our entanglement with the body gets weakened. And everything we consider unavoidable becomes welcome. Then, when we look at the clock, and when the clock keeps ticking all the time, the ticking of the clock tells us only one thing. The ticking of the clock, because when we look at the clock and it ticks, we know, hey Krishna, you are Kalam Yishanam. The ticking of the clock, that is nothing but Krishna's call. It's Krishna's call for us to journey from the temporary to the eternal, for us to journey from a realm of mortality to a realm of immortality, to journey from being finite to a state of being infinite. By recognizing Krishna as Kala, as the time, our perspective to life and living dramatically changes and nothing becomes unpalatable anymore. Therefore, Kunti, based on her own experience, therefore, she looks at Krishna and she recognizes him as Kala. Manye Tvam Kalam Ishanam Anadhinidanam Vibhu. You are the Lord, Anadhinidanam, you have no ending or no beginning. And then she says, hey, Krishna, Samam Charantam Sarvatra Bhutanam Yanmitah Kalihi. Samam Charantam Sarvatra, you pervade and permeate everything. You are all pervading. And not only that, you distribute your mercy and grace equally, she says. By pervading everywhere, you look at everyone, every entity as the same. Everyone is equal to you. Bhutanam yanmitah kalihi. But then one may ask this question, how can this be possible? There seem to be so many differences. People seem to be having different kinds of experiences. No two experience seems to be the same. There seems to be discriminations, differences all over in this world. So how can we then say Krishna distributes his grace, distributes his mercy equally? Krishna himself in the Gita answers, he says, Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshyostina priyaha, he says. Hey Arjuna, Samoham sarvabhuteshu name doshyosmi. I have no differences at all. Everyone is the same. Everyone is equal. There is nothing called aversion in my dictionary whatsoever. But Krishna also adds one more line. He says, Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. The one who is devoted to me, one who loves me, he is closer to me, I am closer to him, he says. Now we start wondering, is Krishna not contradicting himself? On the one hand, he says he is not partial. Everyone is the same, everyone is equal. At the same time, he says his bhakta is dear to him. So he's being partial to his bhakta. So the question is, let us know, is Krishna impartial or partial? This is what Kunti raises the question here. Kunti says, hey Krishna, we all know that you are impartial, even though when people look around in this world, it may seem that you are partial. Why? Everywhere there seem to be differences. There are some people who are suffering. There are some people who are not suffering. There are some people who seem to be getting everything. There are some people who don't seem to be getting anything. Vyasa in his Brahma Sutras beautifully says, Vaishamya Naigranyena Sapekshatvat. He comes up with a sutra that says, Vaishamya Naigranyena Sapekshatvat. Vaishamyam, injustice. Naigranya, cruelty. He says, injustice and cruelty cannot be attributed to Bhagavan. Bhagavan obviously is the cause of all our experiences, no doubt. But we need to understand this very carefully. If I sow a mango seed, only a mango tree will grow. A pineapple tree will not grow. If I sow a jackfruit seed, only a jackfruit tree will grow. A mango tree will not grow. So therefore, the seed that I sow is the cause for the kind of a tree that grows. However, for the tree to grow, I need sunlight, I need water, I need earth. Therefore, for the kind of experiences that I go through in this life, the seed is my own karma. It is my karma which fashions the kind of experiences that I have. Bhagavan is only karma phala data. He gives us the experiences exactly in proportion, in relation to the kind of karma that we accumulate. So therefore, we cannot attribute any cruelty or injustice to him. He is compassionate and he is impartial. One may ask, Kunti herself is raising this question. Why? Because many people say, your son Arjuna is the chosen one. So you don't talk about Krishna being impartial. Just because Arjuna is the chosen one, you can talk about this. Now, we also sometimes go through the same experience. Why is this happening only to me? Somebody else seems to be a chosen one. Why am I not the chosen one? The question we need to ask is, before I become the chosen one, am I choosing the one? Before I become the chosen one, am I choosing the one and only Krishna? Nobody becomes the chosen one unless one makes the choice. If I make Krishna my choice, I become the chosen one. So therefore, to the question, is Krishna partial or impartial? Obviously, Krishna is not an abstract entity, is not an impersonal principle. He is Purushottama. He is a reciprocating sentient entity. Bhagavan reciprocates. So therefore, if I avoid him, he patiently waits. I continue to avoid him, he keeps patiently waiting. He doesn't give up. He patiently keeps waiting. The moment I start to love him, he starts to shower abundant love on me. As long as I keep telling him that I will take control of my life, he keeps patiently waiting. The moment I hand over the control to him, he takes care of everything for me. Therefore, easy impartial he is, easy partial he is impartially partial. Why do I say that? The doors to his partiality is always open. He impartially opens the doors to his partiality. To be with him is a choice that we make. His doors are always open. And therefore, Kunti here is very categorically saying, hey Krishna, samam charantam sarvatra bhutanam yam vitah kalihi. All the discrimination, the differences, the kind of sufferings that we see in this world, or the kind of joys and pleasures that people experience, all of this, when we look at all of this, only one thing should be very clear. That one thing is, hey Krishna, you are samam charantam sarvatra. You distribute your grace, you distribute your kripa, your karuna equally to all. Whether one is receiving it is left to that particular individual. And therefore, she then goes on to say, hey Krishna, naveda kaschit bhagavam chikishitam. Tavehamanasya nrinam vidambanam. Nayasya kaschit dayitosti karhichit veshasyascha yasmin vishamamatir nrinam. She beautifully says, Krishna, no one can understand your leelas. Naveda kaschit bhagavam chikirshitam. Chikirshita, his cheshtita, his leelas. Who can understand your leelas, Hey Krishna? No one can understand your leelas. And that is the reason why Dveshyascha yasmin vishama matir nrinam. People attribute partiality to you only when they do not know you. When they do not understand your cheshtitas. Your cheshtitas appear to be human-like. And therefore, they mislead. And that is the reason why no one can understand you, Hey Krishna. And she says, all your avatars are also cannot be easily comprehended. Janma karma cha vishwatman ajasya akarturatmanah Tiryanku Rishishu Yadashu Tatatyanta Vidambanam, she says. All your avatars are so very bewildering. How do I unravel the mystery with my limited intellect? Some say you descend for the sake of protecting the pious kings. Some others say, hey Krishna, you took the avatara in Vrishni Vamsa, in Yadu Vamsa, because Yadu was your great devotee, a great bhakta. So therefore, in order to please Yadu, your great bhakta, you took the avatara in Yadukula. Some others say Vasudeva and Devaki are blessed, and therefore, in order to please them, you took the avatara as son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Many others say as Dharma ascended, as Bhudevi started to be worried because of the growing adharma. In order to lessen her burden, you took this avatara. There are several reasons that are attributed to as to why you take these avatars, a Krishna. But let me tell you, I know the reason. I can tell you why you have taken this avatara. There can be a long list of reasons that can be attributed, that can be given as the reasons for your avataras. Now Kunti says, let me tell you what is my understanding as to why you took this avatara. She says, Bhave asmin klishyamananam avidya kama karma bihi shravana smaranarhani karishyan niti kechana. She says, you took this avatara for only one reason. Hey Krishna, Bhave asmin klishyamananam avidya kama karma bihi. In order for people to get out of this vicious cycle, avidya kama karma bihi, the whirlpool of vasanas. Every jiva is caught in this whirlpool of vasanas. Vasanas driving desires, desires driving actions, actions driving mental agitations, mental agitations adding up to vasanas. This is a vicious cycle, and there is no end to the cycle. And people are suffering, caught, trapped in this cycle. Klishyamananam. And therefore, in order to give them your helping hand, to pull them out of this Bhavasagara, you have descended for one reason. And how? Shravana smaranarhani karishyaniti kechana. Earlier, Suta answered the rishis of Shaunaka as to what is the Paramadharma. Savai pumsha paro dharmo yatho bhakti radho kshaje ahaituki apratihata yatatma suprasidati, he said. What is the Paramadharma? Bhakti is the Paramadharma. Ahaituki apratihata. Ahaituki, without any cause, causeless bhakti. Bhakti which is not a business between me and Bhagavan. True bhakti, unalloyed devotion to him, without seeking any rewards. Ahaituki apratihata, unbroken, constant contemplation of the Lord. Such bhakti is supreme dharma. In order for people to practice that dharma, you descended as Krishna, you took this avatara as Krishna, in order for people to start practicing bhakti. And how to practice bhakti? Only by celebrating your gunas and your cheshtitas. Jihve ittaya keshavam puraripum tejo vaja sridharam panidvandva samachya achyutakata shotradvayam tam shrunu krishnam lokaya lochanadvaya harer gachangri yukmalayam jigragranam kundapada tulasim murthan athokshajam. Kulashekara beautifully talks about how do we, while living in this world, look beyond this world. While we are living in this world, we cannot escape engagement with this world. It is impractical. to say that I will completely disengage from this world. But at the same time, if I need to spiritually progress, I need to also start looking beyond this world. How do I transcend and transform at the same time? Worldly transcendence may seem conflicting with worldly engagement and worldly transformation. So therefore, bhakti is all about being engaged in this world and at the same time look beyond the world. How do I use my senses? Every sense organ is only given for me to relish Krishna, to stay connected with him. And therefore, Kunti says, your avatara, Krishna avatara, is only for this sake. It is because of this avatara, hey Krishna, we can stay connected with you. Celebrating your gunas, celebrating your cheshtitas, and therefore, Shravana Smaranarhani Karishyaniti Kechana. Hey Krishna, this is the only way to get out of this vicious cycle of vasanas, vicious cycle of avidya, kama, karma, is by constantly staying connected with you, listening to your glories, reflecting on your gunas, reflecting on your cheshtitas, and this is the only way I can strengthen my bhakti, and that is the only way I can get out of this samsaric cycle. And therefore, the Kunti continues on this theme, and she says, Shrimanti, Gayanti, Grinnanti, Abhikshashaha, Smaranti, Nandanti, Tavehitam Janaha, Tayeva Pashyanti, Achirena Tavakam, Bhava Pravaho Paramam Padam Bhujam. Bhava Pravaha Aho Paramam Padam Bhujam, she says. She says, one who constantly keeps Shrinmanti, Gayanti, Grinnanti, Abhikshasaha, Smarananti, Nandanti, Tavehitam Janaha. One who constantly keeps chanting, singing, reflecting on your glories. And at the same time, when one looks at somebody else doing the same, one is pleased. I keep chanting, I keep singing, I keep dancing. And at the same time, when I see another Bhagavata singing, chanting, dancing, I'm equally pleased. Because why? I want everyone to celebrate and relish the glories of Krishna. And when I do that, Kunti says, Tayeva Pashyanti Achirena Tavakam Bhava Pravaho Paramam Padam Bhujam. That is the only way one can see, recognize your holy lotus feet, and it is your lotus feet which can stop this pravaha. This pravaha, what is this pravaha? This pravaha, the continuation of life and death, the cycle which keeps going on and on and on, seems to be unstoppable, but I have found out the solution to stop it. What is the solution? Padam Bhujam. I know once I recognize your lotus feet, it is your lotus feet which can stop this flow of repeated births and deaths, Kunti says. And she says, Neyam Shobhishyate Tatra Yatedanim Gadadhara. Now that she has recognized the solution to all problems, Bhagavan's Padam Bhuja, she says, Neyam Shobhishyate Tatra. This kingdom seems to look, everything looks beautiful here. You know why, hey Krishna? Neyam Shobhishyate Tatra Yatedanim Gadadhara Tvatpadair Ankita Bhati Swalakshana Vilakshitaihi. Swalakshana Vilakshitaihi. Marked by the impressions of your lotus feet. It is your lotus feet, the markings of your lotus feet that has made, because you have walked all over here, and it is the markings, the impressions of your lotus feet that has brought all the beauty around, all the abundance. She says, Krishna, it is your footprints are the blueprints for all abundance. Without your blessings, there is no abundance whatsoever. If There is abundance of water, abundance of food, abundance of happiness. If everything here, if the supply is abundant, there's only one reason. It is because of your karuna, and it is because your feet have walked all over this place, and that is the reason why this place has become so very beautiful. And she says, hey Krishna, can your feet stay back here? Essentially saying, instead of asking him to stay back, she's indirectly asking, can your lotus feet stay back here? Which means, Krishna, can you please stay back? But she knows, Kunti sees that there is no prosperity independent of Krishna. She knows if there is no Krishna, there are no Pandavas. Pandavas' victory is only because of Krishna. If there is no Krishna, there is no victory. There is no Krishna, there is no true happiness. There is no Krishna, there is no abundance. There is no Krishna, there is no security. There is no Krishna, there is no prosperity. And therefore, Kunti, therefore, basically makes a request to him, but she knows it's only a half-hearted request. And now she makes a very, very important submission to Krishna. This is another height of Kunti Stuti. While Vipadatta Santu Shashwat, that was one height of Kunti Stuti, this shloka is another high, another peak of Kunti Stuti. Krishna, where Kunti looks at Krishna and says, hey Krishna, Ata Vishvesha Vishwatman, He Vishvesha, He Vishwatman, He Vishwamurte, Ata Vishvesha Vishwatman, Vishwamurte Swakeshu me, Sneha Pasham Imam Chinti, Hridam Pandush Vrishtishu. Again, another very courageous prayer. It requires courage to ask for this, what Kunti is asking. No one can be bold enough to ask something like this. Sneha Pasham. Now, when Bhagavan comes down and says, are you ready? Any may hesitate. Let's say, right at this very moment, Krishna descends and says, let's go, come home, come back home. It's not going to be easy to reconcile the fact that we have to drop everything that we currently have, because we are all bound by Sneha Pasha. While it may be easy to contemplate on detachment, when it comes to actually doing it, it takes tremendous courage. And Kunti therefore knows, she's asking Krishna to help her here. She says, hey, Ata Vishveshaha, Ata Vishwatman. You are the Lord of this Vishwa. You are the very Atma of this Vishwa. This Vishwa is your Sharira. Hey, Vishwamurte. Swakeshu me, Sneha Pasham Imam Chindi. I only ask for one thing. Sever this attachment of mine. Sever means to cut. Chindi. Sever. Sneha Pasham. Attachment to who? To the Pandavas and to Vrishnis. Because Kunti belongs to both the Pandavas and to Vrishni. So she says, the mother asking Krishna to help her cut her attachment to her own sons. What a courageous prayer to ask. She says, hey Krishna, sever my attachments. Only when my attachments are, only when you sever my attachments, I can unscramble my life. When I unscramble sever, it becomes serve. Sever, S-E-V-E-R is sever. When I unscramble it, it becomes serve. When you sever my attachments, you will enable me to serve you. Therefore, you alone can do this. It is not possible by myself to cut off the attachments with the Pandavas and with the Vrishnis, with all my relationships, including my dear sons. One may here ask this question, how can Kunti say this? Does she not care for her own sons? Has she become stone-like? Has apathy taken over? This is where Kunti teaches us a very important life lesson here. There is a world of difference between emotional dependence and emotional investment. To care is to be emotionally invested, not emotionally dependent. Emotional dependence is not caring, it is a state of weakness. If I am drowning, how can I save somebody else from drowning? If I truly care for somebody, if I'm emotionally dependent, I cannot really care, because it's like one drowning man trying to take care of another drowning man. Yes, I need to be emotionally invested. I need to care. There's a world of difference between emotional investment and emotional dependence. To be committed to a relationship is to be emotionally invested. But when I am emotionally dependent, it becomes a source of great weakness. So we often operate in two extreme zones. Either we are emotionally alienated all the time, or we are emotionally obsessed all the time. Two extremes. Emotionally alienated, that is our way of saying, I'm completely cut off. That also doesn't help. After all, we live in a world, we have roles to play, and we have relationships to take care of. So emotional alienation is not the solution. The other extreme is to operate in a zone of emotional obsession. We are obsessed. Our way of saying taking care of our dear and near is being emotionally obsessed about their well-being. This is what Kunti defines here as sneha pasha, attachment to relationships. This is a great source of ensuring that one stays in this cycle of samsara all the time. It is only Krishna Bhakti that can protect us both from emotional obsession and emotional alienation. Krishna Bhakti protects us from emotional obsession. How? Once we recognize that Krishna is the true protector, then we are assured that the well-being of our loved dear and near is taken care of. Krishna shall protect. So why should I be obsessed about the well-being of my loved ones? Krishna Bhakti protects us from emotional obsession. At the same time, Krishna Bhakti also protects us from emotional alienation. Why? Because I have a duty, a role to play, and therefore I have to show care. How do I show care? By being part of Krishna's work. So therefore, I have to show love and care and not be completely alienated. I have to invest emotionally without being dependent. So therefore, Krishna Bhakti also protects me from emotional alienation. We need to see the difference between commitment and detachment. And therefore, Krishna is being asked by Kunti, Sneha Pasham Imam Chindi Dridam Pandusu Vrishnishu. Help me completely detach. Help me cut my attachment. I will still be committed to the well-being of these people, no doubt, but make me emotionally independent. Cut my attachments so that I can only be attached to you and you alone, Hey Krishna, he says. Tvaime ananya vishaya mathir madhupate asakrit. If we have to pray for one thing to Krishna every day, this is what we need to pray for. Kunti also helps us what to ask Krishna. Many times we wonder. Kunti here is praying and she says what we need to pray for. She says, hey Krishna, hey Bhagavan, Twayi me ananya vishaya mathir madhupate asakrit ratim udbahatat adha gangevaugham udanvati. What a beautiful shloka. Gangevaugham udanvati. Just like how Ganga constantly keeps flowing towards the ocean. Hey Krishna, Twayi me ananya vishaya mathir madhupate. She looks at Krishna and says, hey Madhupate. Madhu here is honey. Madhupate. You are the sweetest of anything that can be sweet. You are the source of all attraction. You are the source of all beauty. Ananya Vishaya. Mathir Madhupate Asakrit. Continuously let my mind stay focused on you continuously without being distracted all the time. Let my thoughts keep flowing in only one direction. Just like how Ganga keeps flowing continuously towards the ocean. You are my ocean. Let my thoughts keep flowing continuously without any distraction, continuously towards you. So we need to understand here two important messages that Kunti gives us, or rather three important messages. One, she says, hey Krishna, you are like the ocean. My mind and the thoughts in my mind are like the Ganges. So therefore, Krishna, the ocean is the shelter of all the rivers. To the ocean, all the rivers are the same. No discrimination whatsoever. Any river is welcome. A pure river like Ganga is welcome. A polluted, any other polluted stream is also welcome. No discrimination whatsoever. Krishna, you are the shelter of all. Kunti also gives us two other important messages. A bhakta holds nothing back. And nothing holds back a bhakta. By giving the analogy of a river flowing to an ocean, she gives us these two very important messages. A bhakta holds nothing back and nothing holds back a bhakta. Just like how the river holds nothing back. The river doesn't say, I will give 70% of mine to you, hey ocean. Let the rest stay back. The river gives itself completely to the ocean. A bhakta holds nothing back. A true bhakta gives up his body, his mind, his intellect, everything, his very being, because he knows he belongs to Krishna. What is there to hold back? He offers everything to Krishna. A bhakta holds nothing back, just like a river holds nothing back. A bhakta holds nothing back. At the same time, nothing holds back a bhakta. Nothing holds back the Ganga from flowing into the ocean. Boulders, mountains, any obstacles. A river flows around, flows over, flows through. A river finds its way. Nothing holds back a river. It finds its way eventually to go and join the ocean. Similarly, nothing can hold back a bhakta. A bhakta will find a way. The bhakta will find a way to stay connected with Krishna. No, this is a great answer to all of us. We keep asking this question. How do I stay connected? Do I stay connected with him only in front of the altar? So the connection stops the moment I come out of the altar and I start doing other things. Kunti is praying here. Let my thoughts keep flowing only in one direction towards you all the time. Nothing will hold back my thoughts in flowing towards you. Nothing can hold. Finding every excuse, if I were to use the word, to bring Krishna in. to experience him in every situation, everywhere, anywhere, anytime, whatever be, at home, at work, outside, with friends, among strangers, while sitting, while traveling, while reading, everywhere, anywhere, anytime, any place, one's thoughts can be always directed to flow towards Krishna all the time. And this is the prayer that we need to be praying. This is what we need to be asking Krishna. This is what Kunti is asking Krishna. Enable me so that my thoughts, my mind stays only in one direction. My thoughts keep flowing only towards you all the time, hey Krishna. There is nothing I ask. So Kunti begins with a big ask. She begins with a big ask. It's just asking Krishna to stay back. And then we see her, as she goes through her stuti, she concludes asking nothing. Sri Krishna, Krishna Sakha, Vishnu Vishabhavanitrik, Rajanyavam Chadahanana Porkavidya, Govinda, Godvija, Suratigara Avatara, Yogeshwara, Hiraguru, Bhagavan, Namaste. Thus, Kunti concludes her stuti on a crescendo, praying to Krishna, asking for nothing, asking for only his mercy, his kripa, his karuna. Immediately, Vyasa notices what happens and records it, which Shuka Brahma obviously also conveys, which Suta Puranika recounts. Prutayetam Kalapadaihi Parinuta Kilodayaha Mantam Jahasa Vaikuntha Mohayanna Iva Mayaya. Pritha, Partha's mother. In fact, Arjuna became Partha only because of Pritha. So we should say not Pritha, Partha's mother. Arjuna is Partha because of Pritha being his mother. Pritha Itham Kalapadaihi. Kalapadaihi. Chosen words. Vyasa himself gives the highest compliments to Kunti. She uses choicest of words, as we have relished throughout. Simple words, but very profound. Kalapadaihi, Parinuta Akhilodayaha. Every word became a gem, a flower, through which she worshipped Krishna. Using chosen words, she glorified Krishna. And when she completed her stuti, what is the outcome? Mandam Jahasa Vaikuntaha. Vaikuntaha, Krishna is Vaikuntha, Vaikunthanatha. All that Krishna did, looked at Kunti and gave her his characteristic enchanting smile. A smile that is enchanting, electrifying, endearing. Not a single word. While everybody is witnessing this glorious incident, Bhakta and Bhagavan staying connected. The Bhakta finishes her stuti and Bhagavan gives the reward. Why did Krishna smile? There are two reasons that we can think of. We can only guess, because this was not recorded by Vyasa or Shukha or Suta. Bhagavan's glories are unlimited. It is humanly impossible to completely glorify him. It is humanly impossible to highlight all his glories. And when a courageous attempt is made to glorify him, it is like a one-year-old child singing out a rhyme, and the father is immensely pleased. The one-year child is blabbering, but the father is immensely pleased. The broken words are nectar to Father's ears. Similarly, when a bhakta praises Bhagavan, they are like broken words of a child. But Bhagavan is immensely pleased. And therefore, Krishna's smile is an indication of his total satisfaction with Kunti's prayer. Another reason for his smile. What is required? What is the ask of a bhakta? A true bhakta does not ask for anything. A true bhakta, a bhakta who is a jnani. Chaturbida bhajante mam janasukriti rojjuna artho jignasurattati jnani cha bharatarshava. A artha, when he asks, Krishna gives wealth, prosperity. The artharthi, when he asks, Krishna secures him what he lost. When a jignasu asks, Krishna gives him knowledge. But jnani doesn't ask. What does Bhagavan give a jnani? What does Bhagavan give a true bhakta? What a bhakta only wants only one thing. Bhagavan's mukollasa. Bhagavan's mukollasa. A smile on Bhagavan's face is all that a bhakta seeks. Nothing more, nothing less. Kunti, the Parama Bhakta, Parama Jnani, Krishna knows. Kunti obviously doesn't want anything else. She doesn't want wealth. She doesn't want anything. She already is asking for cutting off attachments from all relationships. She doesn't want knowledge. She is supremely knowledgeable. She has all the jnana. What does she want? She only wants Krishna's grace. And how one can identify Krishna's grace? How can one realize his grace? Only through his smile. Therefore, with that smile of his, enchanting smile of his, Krishna gives abundant blessings to Kunti. And thus, Kunti receives the greatest of rewards. What else can be more rewarding than Krishna's enchanting smile? Kunti's Stuti that ends with that glorious smile of Krishna. Now, obviously, Krishna has to now leave Dwaraka. Leave to Dwaraka. And as he prepares now, as he starts saying goodbye to everybody, Yudhishthira comes his way. And now Yudhishthira starts to implore Krishna. Now Krishna has to now spend a little bit more time before taking off. Yudhishthira is not in good shape. Yudhishthira, we can now relate to Yudhishthira's state by knowing how Arjuna was earlier on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Astanasteha karunya dharma dharma diyakulam artham prapannamuddishya shastravasaranam kritam. The Gita Shastra, the advent of Gita Shastra can be attributed to Astara Sneha Karunya Dharma Adharma Diyakulam. Arjuna was in a state of confusion, delusion, not knowing the difference between dharma and adharma. Astana Sneha, misplaced affection, misplaced love. And Krishna then had to teach him the Gita Shastra in order to bring clarity to him. Now here, Yudhishthira is in a similar state of grief, misplaced attachment, misplaced love, misplaced compassion. Yudhishthira blames himself for everything that has happened. He starts to lament, "Hey Krishna, knowingly I am the cause for the death of thousands and thousands and thousands of warriors. Knowingly I am the cause for thousands and thousands of women become widows in my kingdom. Knowingly I am the cause for thousands and thousands of people to be completely devoid of their livelihood. I'm incurring a great sin. I am the greatest sinner on this planet, hey Krishna. What I have done is highly condemnable, not acceptable at all. And therefore, I think I am not fit enough to be the king. Krishna says, what has happened? I have gone through all this pain, all this trouble. And now, of all this, now Yudhishthira goes back to square one. Now, the great Vedavyasa also counsels Yudhishthira. All the ministers, all the rishis, everybody counsel him. Yudhishthira is inconsolable. He's still looking up to Krishna for directions. Krishna possibly thought, just now I finished 700 shlokas of Gita. Should I once again restart? Then he looks at Yudhishthira and says, Yudhishthira, the solution to your problem can be only discovered at the place where this problem seems to have been created. Yudhishthira looks around not knowing what Krishna is saying. Then Krishna points him towards Kurukshetra, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre. It is that Kurukshetra where you think all your problems have been created, where all the warriors were slain. So the solution, let me tell you, Yudhishthira, lies there only. Yudhishthira still is not sure. He says, let us all go there to Kurukshetra. The solution is awaiting there. Everybody starts to prepare. All the sages, all the ministers, everyone around. The Pandavas, led by Yudhishthira, they all begin the journey towards Kurukshetra. If we think it is time for another Gita, it is not. This time, it is not Bhagavan who is going to teach, it is his Parama Bhakta who is going to teach. So Yudhishthira prepares and goes towards Kurukshetra on Krishna's advice, knowing well that all the solutions are awaiting there in the form of the Parama Bhakta Bhishma Pitamaha. What ensues is the glorious conversation between Bhishma, who is dying on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and Yudhishthira. And that glorious conversation once again ends on a crescendo which is celebrated as Bhishma Stuti. It will possibly take 1 week to journey all the way to Kurukshetra. So until for us, all of us to get transported to Kurukshetra, 7 days of journey it's going to take. Let us continue to contemplate on the enchanting smile of Krishna, and we will relish the glorious Bhishma Stuti next week. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.